Welcome, aspirants. Let's get right into this high-yield explainer for your GS Paper 3 prep. Today we're unpacking a really crucial intersection of internal security and science and technology, cyber warfare and international law. Let's maximize your revision time and dive straight into this under 5-minute mains analysis.
Absolutely, sir. Now, aspirants, I want you to listen closely to this phrase. Cyber warfare is outpacing global legal accountability. Mark this down. This isn't just a catchy phrase, it's literally your core thesis statement. Whenever you're writing an introduction for a mains question on state-sponsored cyber conflicts, anchoring it with this exact thought shows the examiner you completely grasp the current geopolitical reality.
Spot on. So, here is our roadmap for today. We're structuring this into 5 clear areas. First, the core legal gap. Second, the attribution gap. Third, hurdles to accountability. Fourth, shortcomings of treaties. And finally, India's imperative. Think of this as the exact structural framework you're going to use to build your 15-marker. All right, starting off with Section 1, the core legal gap. You know, a really common misconception among students is that international law is just completely silent on cyberspace. But as we'll see, the law actually does have relevant principles. The real issue? It lies somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. And the crucial keyword you need to jot down here is Article 2.4 of the UN Charter. This article explicitly prohibits the use of force. So theoretically, when a cyber operation severely paralyzes a nation's essential services, this entire framework of state responsibility absolutely applies in principle.
But here's the massive practical bottleneck. While the law exists on paper, figuring out exactly when a cyber hack crosses that invisible line to become an internationally wrongful act is incredibly tough. Proving that a prohibited use of force has happened, which would force a state to pay compensation, well, that is a huge, highly complex legal gray area. Which brings us nicely to Section 2, the attribution gap. Why is establishing that legal threshold so hard? It basically boils down to the secretive nature of these attacks. They are constantly routed through multiple dummy networks and a totally confusing maze of global jurisdictions. And there's a vital distinction you have to understand here. On one hand, you have political certainty. Governments often know perfectly well which rival state is behind an attack. But on the other hand, you have legal proof. Trying to translate classified intelligence into hard, legally admissible evidence for a courtroom, that's a totally different ballgame. It's exactly why victims almost never manage to drag these cases into international tribunals.
Right, so let's look at Section 3, hurdles to cyber accountability. Let's just pause for a second and ask ourselves a very basic question. If sovereign states are actively being attacked, why aren't heavyweights like the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, stepping in to hold the attackers accountable?
Well, the answers lie in these 4 systemic constraints. Aspirants, I want you to highlight points 2 and 3 in your notes: sovereign immunity and fear of escalation. Because domestic courts give foreign states immunity, and frankly, because countries are terrified of military or diplomatic retaliation, these cyber incidents are almost always handled quietly behind closed doors, not in an open court.
And the whole challenge with evidence just compounds that. Think about it. To actually litigate, a country would have to completely expose its classified intelligence gathering methods and prove complex technical chains in an open court. National security agencies are simply not going to take that massive risk. Moving on to Section 4, shortcomings of global treaties. Now, any top-tier UPSC mains answer has to have critical analysis. We need to evaluate the current global frameworks to show the examiner we don't just know what's happening, but we know exactly why it's failing.
Exactly. When you look at things like the Budapest Convention or the UN Convention against Cybercrime, their main focus is law enforcement against criminal gangs. But the unaddressed reality? They completely miss the elephants in the room. They do nothing to stop cyber operations that are used as deliberate, state-sponsored weapons in geopolitical conflicts.
Let's bring this home with Section 5, India's cybersecurity imperative. There's a really dangerous mismatch happening right now. Cyber attacks are getting more vicious by the day, yet they carry literally 0 legal consequences. For a fast digitizing country like ours, this is a massive red flag.
Absolutely. India has what we call a dual mandate here. First off, since our digital reliance in finance, energy, and governance is just skyrocketing, we have got to ruthlessly upgrade our domestic cyber resilience. And second, we can't afford to just be rule takers anymore. We have to actively sit at the table and shape those international discussions on global cyber norms and attribution.
The key takeaway is pretty stark. If these state-sponsored cyber operations keep expanding without any real pathways to accountability, the gap between what the law says and what's actually happening on the ground is just going to explode. We'll be left facing a type of warfare that causes devastating real-world harm, but somehow sits completely outside the reach of the law.
So, we're going to leave you with this provocative thought, especially for your personality test prep. If cyber operations continue to expand without credible legal accountability, how will it completely reshape modern conflict? Really ponder that, build your own perspective, and use the framework we gave you today to elevate your answers. Thanks for tuning into this Explainer, aspirants. Keep pushing hard, and we'll catch you in the next one.